Thank you for joining Jacob City Fishing, where the goal is learning to live in the great outdoors found as we walk outside of our homes into nature and society. In today's Daily Devo, we'll be narrowing our focus in Colossians chapter 1, verse 9, where Paul writes, "And so, from the day we heard, we have not ceased to pray for you, asking that you may be filled with the knowledge of His will in all spiritual wisdom and understanding." Having left my home in Pennsylvania to go into boot camp, I really enjoyed the freedom of not having, as I would have probably put it, burdens of responsibility on my life any longer, since I had grown up in a military family and felt substantial pressures to live particular ways. However, what that ended up doing was actually leading me into a position where I would find myself without confidence or courage or even knowledge in how to make the right decisions and for what goal I should be living my life. In this particular passage, what we find is that Paul is asking God for the people of Colossae to be filled with the knowledge of His will, particularly in all spiritual wisdom and understanding. And he's desiring that they would take the pieces of their lives and opportunities in their lives and really understand what's going on with them. The word for understanding has this sense of bringing together, and we find that when we're struggling to make decisions or we have our own goals and we need to realign our goals, that there are these pieces that we can choose from and interpret and put together, and then use those to ultimately live in a way, as the word wisdom denotes, that is living rightly before God. And so for me, my goal was to not have goals necessarily and to just try to make up the childhood I felt like I missed. Whereas for others, and even now as a father and a husband, a Christian, and serving in my church and in my job, I find myself asking the question of, what is the goal of life, right? When I wake up in the morning, why am I alive? What pieces today am I going to receive? And how am I going to put those together to achieve this right living with the end goal of God's will being lived out in my life? And do I even understand God's will? Especially since there's so many hyper emotional, I hear God's voice saying, I need to marry so-and-so, instead of what Scripture says, even though they're an unbeliever, the Bible is saying, don't be married to an unbeliever, and yet they feel like God is telling them something that's opposed to His Word. That type of mentality shows up in so many different ways. And so I really ask the question to you today, do you believe that you are living for God's will? Do you know what God's will is? And are you putting the pieces together that you've received today in a way that is used to live out a right life before a holy God in alignment with His will and His desires to achieve His goal? And so really all we have is one singular goal: living out the will of God. And that comes in various forms and facets in our lives, based off of the pieces that we've received today and how we put those together to glorify Him, to live out rightly the life that He has given us for His glory. So as you go through your day, maybe make a list of the things that you've been given today. What pieces have you been given? How have you brought them together to glorify God, if you have? And if you haven't achieved that goal yet today, maybe right now is the time to start. Thank you for taking a moment to consider what God has to say during your adventure outdoors. Please click the subscribe button below along with the notifications button on the YouTube channel so you learn how to survive and thrive in these great outdoors.